This post is in response to a question by VO3CDK from Mumbai regarding the mechanism of propagation on various amateur radio bands. He also wishes to know the best time of the day, difference between bands, etc. I am going to base the discussion on my experience over the years in ham radio as well as the information which I have gained from Elmers and friends from on-air and online discussions. These days, when we think of propagation on HF or high frequency bands, what we usually do is to have a look at qrset.com to see the solar terrestrial data by N0NBH. As of now, it shows that 40 to 80 meter propagation is poor at daytime and good at night. 30 to 20 meter is listed as poor at daytime and good at night. Luckily, 17 to 15 meter is listed as good during day and night. 12 to 10 meter is listed as good at daytime and poor at night. These may change on a day-to-day basis and vary with solar activity over varying periods of time. Those who have been operating HF for a long period know that 80 meter and even 160 meter are mainly nighttime bands, while 15 meter and 10 meter are daytime bands. This is because higher level of ionization in the ionosphere is needed for reflection of higher frequencies back to Earth. That brings us to the concept of maximum usable frequency or MUF. Frequencies above MUF go straight to the space without being reflected back to the Earth for being received as sky waves. Reflection to Earth and back to the sky is the basis for long-distance communication with radio waves on a terrestrial basis. Frequencies above the MUF can be used for satellite communication if the satellite transponder picks them up and retransmits back to Earth. Those waves can also be used for line of sight and ground wave propagations. Typically, VHF, UHF and above are used for line of sight communication, communication through repeaters and through satellites. All those who have worked on 40 meter, which is the popular amateur radio band for regional communication, and having plenty of roll call nets, would have noted the pattern in which the band opens up. As a typical example, 40 meter can open up early in the morning for relatively long distance stations like between North and South India at a distance of 2000 km. The time at which it opens could vary from 5:30 am to 6:30 am with the current level of solar activity. Things will be different when the solar activity comes down during the minima of the 11-year solar cycle 25, which we are going through. After some time, we in the South India stop hearing North Indian stations gradually and start hearing South Indian stations very strong. During early morning time, we are unable to hear our local stations, though North Indian stations can hear our neighboring stations. As the day progresses, by about 8:30 am, local stations also start fading on 40 meter, with only the nearest stations being heard well. Moreover, the background noise also increases remarkably, typically to S9 to S9 plus 10 or even 20 dB in city regions. In rural regions, most often the noise, which is mostly due to several radio frequency interference generating devices around is lower. Things can be quite different if you have plenty of solar panels around with solar inverter installations which are not compliant with RFI suppression guidelines. As one DX ham said jokingly, when we started off in ham radio long back, we were the cause of RF interference, often with our homebrew radios radiating harmonics and causing interference to analog TV reception. Now, we radio amateurs are at the receiving end, often not hearing any DX stations most of the time. The cycle repeats in 40 meter by evening in the reverse order. We start hearing local stations first and later on long distance stations. That is why during ANET India at 7:30 p.m., stations from Indonesia and Maldives are able to check in and even become alternate net controls. Similarly, stations from Oman also check into AirNet India on 7.150 MHz from a distance of nearly 2,300 km. We do hear 40 meter Indonesian nets as well in the evening. In fact, if we hear a foreign language station in the evening on 40 meter, it is likely to be an Indonesian station. Sometimes we do get faraway stations also on 40 meter SSB. I have been able to work stations from Spain and Belgium in the morning on 40 meter with my 100 watt and wire setup. Decades back, I had the fortune to work several DX stations, including those from the United States of America on 40 meter during evening and morning hours on CW. That brings us to the concept of gray line propagation. Simply put, gray line is the line separating daylight and night zones of the globe. Due to the difference in ionization of various layers of the ionosphere, dawn and dusk are the best times for long distance communication, typically on 40 and 20 meter bands. Though I have not heard many US stations during gray line propagation recently, mainly because of high noise level these days. I have been able to work some super stations on SSB in early morning and evening. Most of you who are regular on 20 meter band would know that KE5EE is regularly heard on 14.507 kHz starting from 5:30 p.m. local time. But he has a super station and antenna yard, which very few radio amateurs have. Many stations in this region are able to contact him daily on that frequency. I have also been able to have an occasional contact. Going to the higher bands, 15 meter and 10 meter are open mostly during daytime, though occasionally they are open at night also. Usually 15 meter opens first during daytime, followed by 10 meter when the solar activity increases. In the evening, 10 meter band closes first, followed by 15 meter. Incidentally, I was able to have an SSB contact with an Indonesian station on 10 meter at around 10 p.m. local time during the last solar eclipse in the United States. I was looking for any anomalous propagation during the solar eclipse, though I was way beyond the path of the eclipse. Another aspect on 10 meter propagation is the winter anomaly. 10 meter propagation is better during winter time. That is why I was finding 10 meter as the best band in January 2024 when I bought my HF radio, while the band was almost dead by June 2024. In June, we have summer doldrums, which indicates peak solar activity, and the reverse of winter anomaly cuts down the MUF below the 10 meter band. It is supposed to recover by the end of September. Still, I have been able to have occasional 10-meter contacts in July as well. When we move on to 6-meter, which though strictly a VHF band, is there in my HF radio. 6-meter or 50 MHz band is known as the magic band and sometimes the tragic band. That is because the usual propagation rule which apply to other HF bands do not apply to the 6-meter band. It can be silent for months together and open up suddenly to give unusually long distance contact, making it the magic band. These are due to special propagation modes like tropospheric duct propagation, sporadic E-propagation, trans-equatorial propagation, and auroral propagation. Auroral propagation and sporadic E-propagation are listed at the Solar Terrestrial Data by N0NBH on qrz.com. Currently, those are not active. Sporadic E-propagation was seen near the summer doldrums when the 10-meter became inactive. Auroral propagation usually follows a huge solar plasma discharge producing a geomagnetic storm, which we had in May and in second week of August 2024. We in the tropics usually do not have a chance to see aurora, leave alone direct our beam antennas to auroral discharge for contacts by reflecting the beam of the plasma display. You may kindly post your questions for inclusion in future videos in the comment box and I shall try to answer them to the best of my ability. 73s, this is VU2JO.